killing feels describes the real-life perceptions a player has in relation to video games. Whether it being a physical controller, some sort of trigger or mock weapon, or even a mouse and keyboard, the visual, audio, and even recoil or kick of a virtual weapon can bring a lot of satisfaction to those sensitive to these feedback triggers. I am one of these people, and a great deal of my enjoyment of using a gun, sword, or explosive weapon in video games depends almost entirely on these cues, regardless if it's actually the most effective tool for the job. For this video, I am going to go over a small selection of the vast amount of weapons in Warframe. Some provide me with the aforementioned satisfactions that come with a well-designed weapon, and others fall flat. Keeping in mind that while generally many of these triggers are similar between people who have a sense for these triggers, they still can vary. In other words, my choices and reasons for picking a weapon in either category may differ from other people. It also goes without saying that players who don't have this need for any of these feedback triggers, or play the game muted or something, probably won't feel strongly one way or the other. Another thing to note that is most, but not all of these weapons, are chosen in part by the feedback of getting headshots, which while separate from the weapons themselves, really do go hand in hand. This is why you will not find the Ignis on these lists, despite me liking most of the aspects of the weapon's killing feels, as headshot sounds are rare to hear from the weapon. I will also be giving the weapons a basic scoring system from 1 to 10, 1 being bad, in areas of animations, sound, and visuals. Let's start with some positives, aka weapons that offer me the most satisfaction of using. Unsurprisingly for anyone who has known me for any amount of time, the Kraken is my favorite weapon in all of Warframe and scores the highest in all the killing feels areas. In terms of animations, it has a great clunky style reload animation that fits the Grineer aesthetic, and the high kick of the weapon when firing goes well with the sound, so I give it a 7 out of 10 for that. As for sound, it is still rather untouched over the years and still basically sounds the same as it was introduced. Which is a good thing, because the look was not changed either, so the sound has always matched the gun, in my opinion. As such, I give it an 8 out of 10 for sound, as it is still pretty badass sounding. I give it an 8 out of 10 for visuals, as it looks clunky, dangerous, but also tactical, despite the attachments not really doing anything. The Hind is probably my second favorite, as the sound and visuals are great, but although I do admit to getting used to the new sound, I still do prefer the old sound as it matched the haphazard and scrap rifle look of the gun. For animations, it sadly has the standard stock reload at the moment, so it does get a rather average 5 out of 10 for that. With the new sound change, I score the Hind at a 6 out of 10 rather than a 7, because the harsher sound it had before matched the weapon more closely. I do give it an 8 out of 10 for visuals though, because although most people don't like the looks of the Hind, I do really appreciate its looks, as it looks like it was rush welded in a Grineer sweatshop from scrap ship components or something. Another great weapon that has still held up even after its sound getting butchered a few times, we have the Gorgon. The first and second iterations of the sound for me would be a 9 and an 8 respectively, because they really were badass, but the current sound is rather bland for what used to be a very menacing weapon in the hands of Grineer gunners. Currently, I give the sound a decent rating of 7 out of 10 as a result. As for the animations, the reload animation of putting in a tiny little box for the ammo is a bit silly, and the sound does not quite match up, but its firing animation of a slight shaking recoil does sort of compensate for this, and I give it a 6 out of 10 for animations overall. For visuals, the weapon looks great, and its long, imposing barrel ends with menacing spikes, almost like a makeshift bayonet or something. I give the Gorgon a 7 out of 10 for visuals as a result. Let us talk about a few weapons that have fallen flat for me, and we start with Adira. While when at first it was introduced, and a while afterwards, I really enjoyed the weapon and the sound of the lasers, the sound changes it had really threw the weapon off in my opinion, as well as the addition of the sound changing as the clip begins to run low. While an interesting concept, I don't think it fits well with the weapon, as it fires plasma shots and not bullets, at least lore-wise anyways. It does throw me off quite a bit, so overall I give the Adira a 4 out of 10 for sounds as a result. For visuals, it does look pretty nice, but the fact that the bullets actually come out from the top and bottom barrels instead of right down the center is a bit odd to say the least. It's worse with heavy caliber as the shots also fly outward quite a bit, making even less sense, so I give it a 5 out of 10 for visuals. As for animations, the reload is pretty nice even if it makes no logical sense, but what bothers me the most is the lack of visual recoil. When enemies fire it, their weapons kick back, so having a barely moving weapon does bother me a bit. I know it shouldn't, really, but it does, so I give it a 4 out of 10 for animations. The Letran weapons also don't feel quite right to me, and probably not for the reasons you think. For me, the Letran rifles seem like weapons that would have a lot of kick towards the player, but yet they have tons of recoil that moves the weapon up. Especially the normal Letran, which is the best overall in terms of killing feels in my opinion, the straight up vertical recoil does throw me off, as I would imagine a single shot rifle like that would have manageable recoil, but a lot of kick towards the player. Because of this, I give both animations and visuals on the Letran and its Wraith a 4 out of 10 as they both generally have the same issues, but a 7 out of 10 for the Prime as the reload looks and sounds pretty good. Visuals are worse on the normal and Wraith, however, since the areas in the middle of the gun that look like extra bullets are all one texture, which can look pretty ugly. As for the sound, they all sound fairly decent for their looks, but the normal does not have quite as much kick as it looks like it would, so I give the normal a 4, the Wraith a 4, and the Prime a 5 for sounds. The Commack weapons take the final spot on this list for similar reasons to the Adira. While the clanging sound of the firing is okay, it's made worse on the Commack weapons, single and dual, because it begins a lot sooner so you hear it more often. The actual sound itself is rather weak in my opinion, which doesn't really help its case. I give the Commack weapons a 4 out of 10 for sound. The animations get a boost of 7 out of 10 because the reload animations are pretty nice and work well with the visuals of the weapon. Although I do give the Commack weapons a 4 out of 10 for visuals because for me, they do look a bit plain even if I do like Gorgon aesthetics. The Commack weapons also score low because of the lack of headshot kill sounds I get with them, as them being shotguns, since most of the kill shots will be body shots, which takes a lot of the fun out of them. And that is what was supposed to be a short overview of killing feels for me in Warframe and why visuals, animations, and even sounds play a bigger role in what determines a weapon's satisfaction value when using it than how it actually performs in-game. Do you have similar enjoyments to certain weapons like I do? Did the weapons I list more or less fit with your views on their feedback as well? In any case, thanks for watching.